Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about mini consoles. If you've seen some of my previous videos, this is something I'm really passionate about and like to talk about. And today we're going to be talking about the future of mini consoles. As of the recording of this video, the next slated mini console to come out is the TurboGrafx 16 Mini, PC Engine Mini, depending on your territory. And technically it has released, kind of, sorta. But Konami, who's made it, is kind of pushing it back because of the whole virus situation. So it's the next one that we're still waiting on. I personally don't have it yet. I will be picking it up maybe this holiday when it goes on sale. But that, as of right now, that's all that's supposed to be coming out. Besides the PC Classic, I don't know if that's still happening. I did do a couple Google searches before making this video and haven't seen any news updates about that in about a year. There's really nothing new. For those who don't know, that's just a small box, just like any mini console, that just has some classic PC games. At least that's what they're saying it's supposed to be. So if that is still happening, then that's the next one. It's not really a console, but other than that, there's nothing on the board. Back in 2018, we had the Genesis Mini, the Sega kind of talked about. That was supposed to come, and when it was delayed into 2019. So in 2018, we really had nothing new coming, and Sony came in with the PlayStation Classic. Yeah, PlayStation Classic Mini, whatever they called it. And we kind of know what happened with that. It wasn't really that good, but we were kind of wondering what was next from Nintendo, and yeah, nothing really came from Nintendo as for an N64 Mini. The PlayStation Classic released, it wasn't too great, and then next year, 2019, last year, the Sega Genesis Mini came out. But before it released, a few months prior, at E3, Konami announced the TurboGrafx 16, and gave us our next one, what's coming after the Genesis. Genesis releases, and here we are 6 months later or whatever. And the TurboGrafx 16, it's out there. There are reviews for it. People are really happy about it. I'm definitely excited to pick one up. And that's why I really enjoy these mini consoles. It packs a lot of, not this one, packs a lot of great games from the console into a small box. And for someone that's a casual fan, or someone that just is interested in retro gaming, can get these things, or you're just like me and you think they look really, really cool on the shelf. Unfortunately, companies, or a company like Nintendo, who've released the NES and Super Nintendo, they don't really like to keep a large stock out there and price drop it like the others. So it doesn't really work out the best for those. So I've kind of shown off my collection here. I also have the most interesting of all the mini consoles, the C64 Mini. Like I said, probably one of the more interesting ones. Maybe next to the TurboGrafx 16 is the most surprising that we would get a mini console of. But without all that long intro, this is kind of what's released so far. And we want to talk about today, start a conversation on what is going to come in the future. So I've kind of wrote on some paper here, and we're going to talk about it. So the TurboGrafx 16, it's the next one. I mentioned the PC Classic. Is it going to happen? I don't think so. Just based on what I'm seeing right now, I don't think that they were able to secure licensing, something like that. If you guys know something, leave a comment down below. We try and figure this out together. Actually, one I did not mention, the Atari flashback from AtGames. The Flashback X released. I know a lot of people kind of giving it some grief last year. I was pretty excited for it. I haven't picked it up yet because I think it's like $80, and well, come on. Yeah, I'll wait until that goes on sale a little bit before I pick that one up. But what makes that one really exciting is that it actually somewhat resembles the console with mechanical switches rather than squishy, ugly orange buttons. And I think the controllers are also, I think they're USB, but they actually have cords instead of being like TV remotes, IR sensors. So pretty cool. And I mean, come on, it's the 2600. AtGames does at least generally good emulation with that. And speaking of on AtGames, not their Genesis stuff, but they've also done in the past flashback consoles for the ColecoVision, I think, or it might have been the Intellivision, something like that. If they still have the licensing to those, it'd be really cool if they were to re-release a ColecoVision or an Intellivision flashback that is better quality, kind of like they did with the Atari Flashback X. Hopefully better naming, just call it a ColecoVision Mini. But anyway, so AtGames, that's something that they could do, and yeah, I think we'd be satisfied with that. Moving on, something that's not a mini console, the Sega Genesis Mini. In Japan, they released the Sega CD and the 32X. We all know this. Little add-ons, and they didn't do it here in North America. I think for Sega, that would probably be their next move, is to do a worldwide release with that. They've kind of hinted towards it. They sent it out to media. I don't know if they have plans to do it. I certainly hope so. It's just plastic, so I don't really see why not. Maybe for $30, $40 or something. Maybe online only through Sega's website. Anyway, that's not really that important. So we're going to move on with Sega, and a lot of people are asking for the next thing to be the Sega Saturn, and of course I would want that, absolutely, but I think that would be a bit challenging. It'd be very expensive, like the PlayStation Classic. It most likely will cost $100 or more. I don't think people would have an issue with that, but in terms of emulation, it might cost more than $100. And can it get 20 games? I mean, Sega owns most games, so you know, the good ones anyway for the Saturn. So that shouldn't be too much of an issue, but I think the simpler thing would be to wait for that and do a Master System Mini. Comment below if you think that's something that you would want. I think that's the Master System is kind of another console that's a little bit more niche. Pretty much the Genesis is the only one from Sega that isn't. And not to say that its games are not expensive. They very much are very expensive. The Master System has a strong library of games owned by Sega. They could do, let's see, this one released for $80, right? With 40 some games, right? So they could easily do one that has the same amount, about 40 games, for $60, maybe 50, include 2 controllers, little miniature Master System. Yeah, 40 games. Yeah, some third-party stuff in there, mostly Sega stuff. Should be pretty easy. Yeah, I'd pick that up. Let me know if you would too. And then maybe give it a couple of years, see if they release this 2021, for example. That's 2 years after the Genesis. And then 2022, give it another 2 years. That's 4 years from the Genesis Mini for a Sega Saturn Mini. And yeah, you know, how much could that cost? Maybe then being, if they could get it for 80, maybe 100 then, with 30 Sega Saturn classics, absolutely. Considering the prices for Sega Saturn, that would be a good deal. Let me know again in the comments if that's the one you're wanting. And I think the last one is, of course, the Dreamcast, and that would probably be a ways off. I would say that Sega would probably want to kind of knock these out first. I really think the Master System is an easy one to it's a little, just move in the right direction and then try and tackle the Saturn. And years down the line, I'm saying, maybe move to the Dreamcast at that time. As for games, I couldn't even begin to think about that. Maybe I'll make a video in the future. Let me know if that's something that's interesting to you. Leave a comment down below with the 20 games that you'd want for the Sega Saturn and Dreamcast. Just kind of start some lists here. So that's the future of Sega. I don't know if they're really interested in moving forward, but I would say of all the companies, they're probably the most likely. So we're going to move to Nintendo. The last one they released was the Super Nintendo. They also did the NES. We all know this. We all tried to get them. Hopefully everyone got one when they were available, because now it's impossible. Next is the N64. This is the one I've been waiting for. Right when the NES Classic came out, I was like, oh, that would be really cool if they did an N64. And as of now, we don't have anything. Obviously, there's some patent rumors. Back when Reggie was with Nintendo, he said no, and I think even Doug Bowser has kind of mentioned that no, they're not interested. I want to keep believing that they're lying to us, because an N64 Mini, come on, 20 games. That's all you need. It's just 20 games from the N64. There ain't that many, on there, but 20 classics. I mean, Nintendo probably owns 20 classics that can fill that up easily. Again, I can make my pick for 20 games. That'd actually be pretty hard to just narrow it down to 20. But it's the cost. Same thing with the PlayStation. Emulation's a bit harder, a little bit more memory, but that's not really the issue. It's the rare games. No, it's not the rare game. The rare made games that Microsoft owns now. I know people are going to mention GoldenEye. Not GoldenEye, no. And not really Perfect Dark either. Those are rated M. Sony did it. I think the TurboGrafx is rated M, but this is Nintendo. They want to keep it at a T rating. I'm talking about not Conker's Bad Fur Day, unfortunately, no. Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, and I don't know, maybe one more. Diddy Kong Racing, there we go. And maybe Jet Force Gemini. Probably not that one. Maybe, I don't know. But at least Banjo-Kazooie, and maybe its sequel. Those games, that's something that people would really want. I know GoldenEye, of course, but keeping that T rating and below, those are so important to this console. So last year when I saw Nintendo and Microsoft really come together, a few games, Banjo was in Smash, it really looked like they could have announced after their Direct, hey, N64 Classic, it's coming. Didn't happen. Really hoping for it this year. Likelihood at this point, I don't know, maybe a 20% chance of it happening. If it's not announced this year, it's gonna probably really fall to not happening, unfortunately. It just seems like Nintendo, like they say, they don't really have any interest in it, and I find that to be very disappointing, and I hope it's not true. But any else from Nintendo will be a ways off, so I'm not going to get too much more into that. We'll move into Sony real quick. Are they going to do anything else beyond the PlayStation? No. No. And then Microsoft, because a few people have asked me, do you think Microsoft's going to do an Xbox Mini? No. Of course not. That's ridiculous. And let's see. Now we're going to get into some weirder consoles. I'm sorry if Sony platforms or Microsoft is something that you're really looking forward to. But come on, PlayStation 2, original Xbox. Like, come on. That's ridiculous. At least for the foreseeable future. Right now. Yeah. Okay, so some things that are a little bit more niche. Getting towards the bottom of the list here, some Atari consoles. Not the 5200. This is kind of more moving into the AtGames, kind of getting back to that again. I mentioned them doing maybe a ColecoVision. I know they kind of had the rights to that at one point. Why not a 7800? They put out an Atari 2600 flashback every year. Do a 7800 in the same vein as the Flashback X that they did last year. That's what it was called, yeah. Make it real nice. Make it look like the actual console, with the buttons instead of, TV remotes that you're playing with. Make it look really quality. Get a good, I don't even know how many games are on the 7800. Make it a good $50 and throw 20 games on there that are on the 7800. And there you go. I mean, I know I'd pick it up. I know a lot of people probably would that are interested in the 7800 because finding working ones is getting harder, much like the 2600. But the one I think that is most interesting from Atari would be the Jaguar. That's a really expensive console that I don't think a lot of people are trying to buy, but there's a lot of games for it. There are some games for it that people don't really want to go out to buy a Jaguar to play these few games that are on it. Tempest 2000, for example. I don't know how many people actually want to play that, but it would be interesting to see them release a Jaguar Mini. Of course, this is most likely would be done by AtGames. I would hope that, Atari, if they really cared about doing mini consoles like this, these flashbacks, they would find a company that kind of knows what they're doing for something a little bit more powerful, because the Jaguar, I guess, the game's a little bit more complicated than a Genesis. They can't really handle a Genesis from what we've seen. So I think that's a bit stretched, but 7800, definitely possible. Moving on, the CDI and the 3DO, I've got these grouped together because these are never going to happen, but these two are consoles that should happen, because I know it's actually a joke that Philips kind of joked about doing a CDI Mini with just a bunch of ridiculous games. Some that weren't even games, they're like encyclopedias or something. But the thing is, some of these games, it actually makes sense. The 3DO and the CDI, they're just expensive. The hardware is kind of hard to come by, not to mention it is expensive, as well as the games. So the few games that are on there, for people that want to check them out, emulation is not really there. If they'd spent the time and actually made them, that would be really great. And that's not going to happen, so we'll move on. The last thing I have written down here is the NeoGeo, because you guys have probably already typed into the comments, I didn't mention the NeoGeo Mini, and that's because it's not a NeoGeo. It's just a little tiny toy arcade thing that doesn't look like a NeoGeo. It doesn't even look like a NeoGeo arcade cabinet. So yeah, SNK really dropped the ball on that one. That's not one I own. I do plan to get the Atari Flashback, and I do plan to get the TurboGrafx, and if the PC one comes out, I will get that, and any future ones that these companies are making, but I will not get the NeoGeo because it's not, if they actually made a NeoGeo, like the console looking thing, or the NeoGeo CD, and miniaturized that, I would get it. Not to mention the controllers. Doesn't have the clicky sticks, it's just like an analog stick for fighting games. Doesn't make any sense. Very poor quality, not to mention it's very expensive. I think it costs more than the PlayStation. I didn't pay $100 for this, though. I paid $20. So just unbelievable pricing. It hasn't come down. I think it's actually gone up because resellers, they don't really make anymore because no one bought it. And there's multiple versions. It's very confusing. It seems like a really bad product. I don't have any interest in that. It has a lot of games on it. I've heard the emulation is kind of poor though. It's just disappointing to see that the NeoGeo is extremely expensive. Probably of all these, it may be the most expensive to get original cartridges for the NeoGeo. Unbelievable, not to mention the hardware to play those games. So that's the one that is most needed. And if it's going to be expensive, that's fine. It's just make it quality, and they just didn't do that. So that's really all I have as the future. I would hope that NeoGeo, SNK would release a NeoGeo again, rethink it. Hopefully they would see this video and say, yeah, we should do that. If it's got to be over $100, so be it. If the quality is there, I will buy it. So will so many other people, because that's what people would want, is a quality product. Sega, they are selling a lot of these. They know this. Nintendo, come on, no one's not buying it. I guess that's what I was trying to say. PlayStation Classic, Sony, they learned their lesson. If they ever try and do this again, I don't think they're going to make the same mistakes. And yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. So to answer the question, what is the future of these mini consoles? Then there's not really an answer. There's not really much of a future. Eventually, they will run out of consoles to make mini versions of. But there is a good amount that, as I hope I've shed light on, that there's mini consoles. There's quite a few more mini consoles that can be made. The problem is I don't know if there's many companies that are interested. Nintendo doesn't seem too interested. I don't think Sony is going to be moving forward ever in the future. Microsoft, I don't think will ever get into that. Sega seems like the company that is going to be, has any chance of kind of taking the torch. Konami doesn't really have the license to any other consoles. Then there's AtGames. Like I said, they have a few options, but they don't do much, you know. They're not very good at what they do. The Atari Flashback seems okay, it seems good, but I couldn't really see them doing much more beyond that. I don't know what the company was that made the C64 Mini, Retro Games Limited, apparently. Maybe they can do something. I don't know what else they've done. I know they made a large version of this. That's kind of interesting, but this is pretty cool. Hopefully they do something. Maybe some other retro game computers like the Amiga, that's one? I don't really know old computers. Maybe them, but other than that, that's really it. There's not a lot else. I can't really see SNK going back in with the NeoGeo. CDI and 3DO, not gonna happen, although I would want for it. So the mini console craze, they're awesome. We all love them. We want more of them. And this video is getting crazy long because I keep talking about them. And unfortunately, that's it. This is the future is bleak, I guess we can say. So let me know, do you guys have any other ideas for future mini consoles? If you do, please leave a comment. What do you think the likelihood is of a CDI Mini? You know, that's the one I really, really want. Of course it is. And is there any things that you guys are interested in? Definitely leave a comment. If you like the video, go ahead and like it. Dislike it if not, and I'll see you guys in the next one.